since he took office, 86,000 more Canadians are unemployed, and we have the second highest unemployment in the G7. This is all the result of out-of-control government spending and taxes. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. And now the Parliamentary Budget Officer rates his deficit, says, quote, very alarming, stupefying, shocking, unsustainable.
Good day, political chaos enthusiasts. Picture this: Mark Carney, the man who steered central banks through financial storms on both sides of the Atlantic, just walked into Canada's political machinery and decided to do what every new boss dreams of doing on their first day: cleaning house. And when I say cleaning house, I mean he's shown several deputy ministers the door faster than you can say economic recovery. The former Bank of Canada and Bank of England governor isn't playing nice, and honestly, the shockwaves are absolutely delicious. Quick favor, if you're loving this political drama, hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell to keep getting the latest updates on Canadian and UK politics. Cheers if you did. Now back to the show. So let's dive into what's actually happening here, because this isn't just your standard political shuffle where people get moved around like chess pieces on a very boring board. Mark Carney, who recently took the helm as Canada's Liberal leader and is positioning himself as the potential next Prime Minister, has apparently decided that subtlety is overrated. He's gone in with what can only be described as a corporate restructuring mindset, looking at the deputy minister level, the senior
sustainable. If you don't change, this is done. Something is going to break. We are at the edge of a cliff. Those are the words of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. When will he stop his out-of-control spending? When he's over the edge of the cliff?
Yeah. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Civil servants who actually keep the government machinery running, and asking the tough question, do we really need all of you? Spoiler alert, his answer appears to be a resounding no. Now, why would Carney do something so bold, so potentially controversial, right out of the gate? Well, here's where it gets interesting. Deputy ministers in the Canadian system are the unelected officials who run government departments. They're the institutional memory, the ones who know where all the procedural bodies are buried, and they wield enormous influence over how policy actually gets implemented. They're also, and this is crucial, often seen as resistant to change. They've been doing things a certain way for years, sometimes decades, and any new political leader wanting to shake things up has to get through them first. Carney, being the pragmatic economist he is, apparently looked at this system and thought, why negotiate with the old guard when I can just build a new one? But hold on, because the plot thickens like a proper British custard. The timing of these dismissals is absolutely fascinating. Carney is making these moves whilst positioning himself as the fresh face of Canadian politics, the outsider who can fix what's broken.
Mr. Speaker, there's a little thing called cause and effect. And the cause that the Leader of the Opposition is missing is the U.S. tariffs. The U.S. tariffs that are hitting steel, the U.S. tariffs that are hitting lumber, the U.S. tariffs that are hitting our...
He's not some career politician who spent 30 years learning to play nice with the bureaucracy. He's the guy who told financial institutions what to do during global crises and actually got them to listen. So when he walks into the Ottawa establishment and starts swinging the axe, he's sending a very clear message: things are going to be different under my watch, and if you're not on board, there's the exit. Now, let's talk about the reaction, because naturally, you can't sack senior government officials without creating absolute pandemonium. The public service unions are predictably furious, calling this an attack on institutional independence and professional civil service. Opposition parties are having an absolute field day, questioning whether Carney
auto sector. That's why we need to build this country strong. That's why we're getting spending under control. That's why we're going to spend less to invest more. I believe in this country, Mr. Speaker. I'm joining us.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Spend less? Deficit spending is up almost 100%.
Understands how government actually works, or if he thinks he's still running a central bank where his word is law. Conservative critics are painting him as an elitist technocrat who's too arrogant to respect Canadian democratic institutions. The NDP, meanwhile, is watching from the sidelines with popcorn, enjoying the Liberal infighting whilst preparing their own attacks. It's political theater at its absolute finest, and everyone's got a role to play. Here's where Carney's defenders come in, though, because it's not all criticism and controversy. His supporters argue that Canada's civil service has become bloated, resistant to innovation, and frankly, not fit for purpose in addressing modern challenges. They point to sluggish policy implementation, interdepartmental turf wars, and a general culture of risk aversion that prevents bold action. In their view, Carney isn't being reckless, he's being refreshingly decisive. He's doing what voters actually want, cutting through bureaucratic red tape and demanding excellence instead of mediocrity. If a few deputy ministers lose their jobs in the process, well, that's the cost of real change. But let's not pretend this is risk-free for Carney, because it absolutely isn't. Every person he dismisses has institutional knowledge, relationships, and expertise that can't be replaced overnight. If his new team fumbles, if government services suffer, if there are scandals or mistakes traced back to inexperienced replacements
since this prime minister took office. And as for investment, it has fallen. In fact, $50 billion of net investment has left since he took office. And yet he repeats the same promises the Liberals have been making for a decade. They said their deficits would lead to more investment. Since they took office, investment is down by 10%.
That's all on him. He's essentially betting his political future on the idea that he can rebuild parts of the federal bureaucracy quickly enough to avoid disaster while simultaneously campaigning and governing. It's the kind of high-wire act that requires either brilliant strategy or tremendous hubris, and time will tell which one this is. Now, drawing a parallel to the UK, because we love a good transatlantic comparison, this move has shades of what incoming governments do at Westminster when they shuffle permanent secretaries, the British equivalent of deputy ministers. The difference is that in Britain, these moves are usually handled with more diplomatic finesse, quietly retiring people into comfortable peerages or advisory roles rather than outright sackings. Carney's approach is decidedly more North American, more corporate, and frankly, more brutal. He's treating government restructuring like a merger and acquisition, identifying redundancies and eliminating them. Whether Canadian political culture will tolerate this remains to be seen. What makes this absolutely riveting from a political analysis perspective is that Carney is essentially stress-testing a fundamental question: can an outsider truly reform government, or does the system always win?
The worst investment record in the G7. In fact, with $600 billion more debt under this government, investment has fallen. How much more debt would they have to add on the backs of Canadians to reverse this disastrous result?
History is littered with political leaders who promise to drain swamps, shake up establishments, and challenge the status quo, only to get absorbed or defeated by the very institutions they sought to change. Carney's background gives him advantages: credibility, technical expertise, international experience, but it also makes him vulnerable to accusations of not understanding political realities. This deputy minister shakeup is his opening gambit, and the entire political class is watching to see if he's playing chess or just flipping the board. The coming weeks will reveal whether this was strategic brilliance or a massive miscalculation. Either way, it's absolutely must-watch political drama, and we'll be here covering every twist and turn.
Mr. Speaker, once again, it's time for a little fiscal lesson for the Leader of the Opposition. Strongest credit rating in the world, AAA, S&P, and Moody's. Lowest deficit in the G7. Lowest debt level in the G7. Lowest net debt to GDP in the G7.
Thanks for watching, folks. Subscribe for more political chaos from Canada and the UK. Until next time, stay curious.